Well, good morning, folks. Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. Well, within minutes, they say, of Buffoon's speech yesterday, in which he detailed, of course, a long litany of liberal dreams, there was a church shooting in Ames, Iowa. From what I see, just early reports this morning, and not a lot has come out about it, interestingly enough, because it doesn't fall within, well, actually it does fall within the parameters of mass shooting, which according to the FBI and some others is 3 or 4 or more. And I don't know why they say 3 or 4. It's either should be 3 or more or 4 or more, right? Shooting victims, some dead, some not, whatever. Well, in this case, there's 3 dead. It's a mega church in Ames, Iowa. 2 church ladies apparently dead, and the shooter dead. Now, we don't know exactly what the situation is yet. If it was a mega church, it occurs to me, since I have some experience in this. Speaking of which, experience. Experience can be so important when developing an opinion. Opinions float around through the world, and it's amazing to me how many opinions are held with such certainty by people without experience. We've seen the difference in police response between the one or should I call it the non-response in Uvalde, and the response in Oklahoma, in the Tulsa Medical Center. The last one, the first one in which the police did not do what they should have done, and the second one in which the police did what they should have done, and that is they went in after that guy and they killed him. Period. You see, that's what the police are supposed to do. Now, I have some experience in this, and maybe on Patreon I'll tell you a story of some of the things that I did. But I have some experience. I have more than some experience. So when and this brings us about, and I'll lead this into a minute, when I saw pretty much Uvalde, and I saw the first reports come in, there was so much about it that did not make sense. It raised more red flags than a Moscow Mayday parade for me. And I could tell. I couldn't tell exactly, but I could tell what they were trying to push and what they were trying to hide. Because you see, to somebody with experience, it made no sense. And as it turns out, and so I came on and I made the video about it. And I had some people just get on me. You shouldn't say stuff like that, for any number of reasons. And I had a number of people said, yeah, you're exactly right. You know what the difference between those two groups was? The ones who said you're exactly right were either current or former law enforcement with experience in these things. The ones who were saying, you shouldn't talk about you shouldn't say things like that, didn't have the experience. They were not law enforcement officers. See, because to me, a law enforcement officer is a guy who's been on the street, who is on the street or on the roads, who's out there in the world trying to take care of this stuff. And as a result of that, we know certain things. And as it comes out with more and more that Uvalde, regardless of the apologists for the police inaction out there, as it comes out more and more, we find that it's worse and worse. And I'm sorry to see those apologists. Here, I've never been an apologist for improper behavior in the police or any place else. Do you know why? Because it's wrong. If somebody does something wrong, it's wrong. If you can't do the job, you should stop taking the check. And if you're an apologist for the police. Now, there's a difference between being a supporter of law enforcement and an apologist. Okay? A supporter is one who supports those who are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I am 100% a supporter of that. An apologist is one that no matter what they do, you're not going to say anything bad about them, and nobody should either. Because, after all, they're on the team. You can't say anything bad. Well, that means you can't hold anybody to account. That means that the rules don't mean anything. That means that the standards don't mean anything. That means that when somebody puts on a badge, they can do any damn thing that they want to or not do what they don't want to. And it's fine with you. Is that right? You see, if you're an apologist for police when they do wrong things, you're an apologist for the government. That's what it is. Now, are you an apologist for the government? Because I'm not. I haven't been. So for any of you who are still here, who want to come in, if you don't have the experience, there's nothing wrong with not having the experience. And I keep saying, but there's too many people that think they have the experience, so that they want to express an opinion. And, resist the urge to get on and express an opinion that you don't have the experience to support. Okay? Enough of that. So, what tells me and so this is leading up to what I was saying, this church shooting in Ames, Iowa, right? Within a short period of time, the article said within minutes. I don't, but then that's the media. It could be within hours. It doesn't make any difference. Shortly after his idiocies speech, there was a shooting. According to the FBI, we could call it a mass shooting. I don't know if I'd consider it a mass shooting, although it falls within the parameters of their definition. But it was a shooting. 3 people dead, 2 women and the shooter. And like I said, that implies to me, although I don't know, we'll find out, that being a megachurch, they probably have their own armed security, which is probably made up of retired law enforcement. Okay, because I'm familiar with megachurches, how they do that. Why did it happen? We don't know. Who did it? We don't know. Was it targeted or was it random? We don't know. There's a lot of things that as yet we don't know. However, there are some things that we should take out of this. And that is that most of these recent shootings have happened at soft targets. I know that a lot of you have already been yelling at me it's because it was in a soft target. You're exactly right. These soft targets with the little circle on the bar. No, none of this. Can't protect yourself in here are magnets to people who want to hurt each other. Now, this situation, if there were just two women, I don't know. I'm not going to get into whether it was targeted or not. But people who want to hurt people feel a lot better going into a location, a situation to where they know the good people, the law-abiding people, have left their protection at home or in the car. Right? That's right. So we have to stop that. Here is where the pushback has to come. While the other side is talking about taking away, restrictions and taking away rights and all of this, we have to be vocally promoting the opposite. And that is an increase in people's ability to protect themselves anywhere at any time. We need to do away with these gun-free zones completely. States can do this. States can take a lead on this. And they can say, no gun-free zones. We went through that in Kansas, and we got most of it taken care of. And the way that they did it here was, they said, well, if you are going to put in a gun restriction, then you are responsible legally responsible for anything that happens in there. Okay, and that means you'd better have armed security, and you'd better have metal detectors at all entrances, and you're still liable. Okay, and so what happened was, with the exception of a few things that were exempt, like government buildings, and when they shouldn't be exempt, they got it done. Most places, took down their little no defense signs. Not all. Hospitals left them up, but whatever. And other places did too. But that's what we need to move on, and that is do away with these protection-free zones. That's where the majority of these things happen. Secondly, harden them. We need to harden schools. We need to harden hospitals. We need to harden every place that falls within, certain parameters. You can't harden grocery stores. I mean, that's private. That's private there. But, and that's up to them. I would suggest that they harden them too. I just heard that the big grocery store chain around in the Midwest, Hy-Vee, is going to put armed guards in every store. Okay, it seems like a shame, but hey, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. We live in the world we live in, not the world that we wished we did, right? And we have a choice. Either we say, oh, we can continue to complain, or we can say, all right, let's do what it takes to stop it. There was a reason that when the pioneers came across the plains and the army came out, they built forts, right? So we need to harden these things. We can harden our school with all the money that we're using, and this is no new. You all know this argument as well as I do. We're sending $40 billion to Ukraine where we have no business being, and we're probably on the wrong side anyway. Which is not unusual for us. That money should be spent here at home. All the money that's being used to bring in refugees or to open the border, all these kinds of things, that money can best be used. One of the things that made me realize that law enforcement was going the wrong way, it was many, many years ago. And this isn't about the guys who are on the road and on the street at all. This is about corporate law enforcement, administrative law enforcement. I remember when they were making, when I was still on the job, and when I was with the Federal Strike Force and then another federal task force, our offices were in buildings downtown Kansas City, just normal buildings. Some were in the federal building, and others, the undercovers, we were in super secret locations. But that was it. And then I saw, after I left, back during the 80s, when the FBI was building their new building, I couldn't believe it. It was over in kind of a separate section of town. It looked like a pillbox. All concrete, hardly any windows. And they put up a fence around that looked like they were, in enemy territory. And I thought at that time, I said, that's not right. That's not right. They have set this up as a defendable position against attack. And it made me concerned. And that's when I started paying more attention to the direction in which federal overall law enforcement was headed. They no longer felt that they were a part of the community or the country, but they were different. They were separate. They felt they need to be protected from the people. And if you think you need to be protected from the people, it probably means you're doing things that the people would find objectionable, right? Okay. So we need to harden all of these areas, schools, churches, that's up to them. Harden your home. I haven't talked about my home. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. If you've read my book, you see a little bit about it. Harden your home. There's two ways to do that. There's Well, there's many different ways to do that, okay? Harden it as far as entry, and then harden it as far as security. Okay. With schools, single points of entry. We used to, Kelly and I would always be kind of irritated whenever, for the last several years, whenever we'd gone up to any of the kids' schools during the day or for an event or to see them or whatever, that we have to stand outside and hold our driver's licenses up to a little camera. And even when we go together, Kelly's usually in front of me, and she'll hold up her license, and so they get see her face and her license. They take pictures of it, and then they recognize her, and I'm standing right next to her, and they all know me. And you know what they say? And who's the gentleman behind you? Could we see your ID too? These people know me, but they ask that. You see, our schools have been hardened for a long time. And while it's kind of irritating, and it irritates me that our country has gotten to the point where that's necessary, well, it's gotten to the point where it's necessary, so better to do it than not do it and just grouse about it, right? So then we go through a single point of entry. Everything else is locked down tight. A single point of entry, and now we are in a gateway, right? Now we have to go through other doors to get to the office area. And then we have to go through, once we're cleared there and we sign in, we have to go through another door to get into the school proper. See, every school should be like that. Well, every school shouldn't be like that, because it shouldn't have to be like that. But since it has to be like that, it should be like that. We there's the old term Fortress America. Sad to say. But if you think about how this country started out, if we talk about how we got to take things back the way that they were, well, this is kind of the way they were to begin with. Okay, there was no assured safety, as I talked about yesterday. Nobody has a right to be safe. Your safety depends on you making sure that you're safe. So we need to harden everything, and then we need to put in those locations, whether it's schools, hospitals, medical buildings, whatever it is. Everybody needs to realize they need to take responsibility for their protection and for their security. So if there need to be armed officers at every one of those entry points, and they need to be behind ballistic glass that they can come out and interject themselves into a situation, whatever needs to be done. It can be done. It can be done. It's not that difficult. It's going to cost some money. Good, we waste money all the time. Let's spend money on this instead of wasting it on all these things that we do. And hospitals, I still see hospitals with unarmed security. That is insane. That is insane. And the people who are making these decisions are people without experience. And they're doing so at the direction of their public relations office and their legal department, because they figure it's going to cost them less to bury an unarmed security guard, or a couple people who are killed within there. They know that in today's climate, now this could be changing, in today's climate, they're not going to be held liable, and that needs to change. That's what Kansas did. You're liable. If you keep guns out, you're liable for what happens in here, that a person could have been able to protect themselves if they had carried a protection device, right? Everything needs, it is time. It is time to tighten up, lock down, and secure the facilities. Now we can go on the other side too and add a little bit more, but everybody needs to be able to carry, and everybody should carry. As I said in yesterday's, if you don't carry, you are making the conscious decision not to protect yourself and not to be able to help others. And I don't think most people put it in that perspective. And so here's what I would suggest that all of you out there, when you talk to your friends who don't carry or don't, I already had, after I said that, I already had several people on Patreon says, I haven't carried, but you got me thinking and you've changed my mind, and I'm going to start carrying. Good. Excellent. The world is now safer because you're going to be carrying. We need to sing this song louder and more often. And I think as people, and many won't be hip to it, but many will. And if you put it in that regard, if you don't carry, you have made the conscious decision that you refuse to defend yourself and your children, and you're leaving your safety and security up to strangers who may or may not show up properly and in time. And that's all it is. So security in today's world is a matter of hardening targets and arming a resistance. That comes down to people. I've said before, not just me, other people have, this stuff is going to continue. I feel we're in for a lot more of this. For whatever reasons, and there's all sorts of reasons that we can think of, right? Could be copycat. When these things start going, they tend to go for a long time. Is it politically driven? What say you? Is it mental health driven? A lot of it is. That's another thing that we have to do is we have to address the mental health problem in our country. And that is so complicated, I'm not going to get into it here. And we have to address the cultural collapse. And I'll be real honest with you, I have no hopes we're going to do that, because people are just resistant to it. And if you start talking about cultural collapse, you're going to be called all kinds of phobes, and I don't care, But your safety is up to you. Make yourself known. Make your opinion known. Get out there and get these people, hold them to account. Let's harden these places. And let's harden ourselves. And make sure that we are mentally and physically ready and able to stand up and respond to these situations if they happen in our presence. Okay? All right. You all have a good day. Join us over on Patreon. I didn't even say that. Welcome to all the new people. It's fantastic to have you here. Join us on Patreon, where I get a lot deeper in the ways to protect yourself, and a lot of stuff that I can't put on YouTube. So you all have a great day. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And one of the ways that we can prepare now is to take the initiative and to be aggressive and pushing back as the other side tries to demoralize and disarm a country. We can't just fight against that. We have to have stuff to throw out there that's even beyond just defensive. And we have to say, no, not only that, but we need to remove these gun-free zones. We need to harden our schools, hospitals, and everything else. And we need to step up as Americans and as adults and recognize that we are responsible for our own safety and security, and we're gonna do it. Y'all have a good day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.